All right. It's a good evening. Welcome to the analysis, and we will deal with the issue of the so-called ancestral spirits that are so much praised in Africa. And you hear a lot of people in Africa talk about ancestral spirits, that they are watching over them, and that they are the one, so on and so on. A lot of those nonsense that a lot of so-called learned African, folks, talk about shamelessly, in fact, without knowledge. Now, first thing first, who are these spirits? If you get to Genesis chapter 6, you'll find an interesting story that the sons of God saw that there were beautiful women among the daughters of men, and then they came and chose wives for themselves. These are the sons of God. Some people say that it's not angels. These are not angels. These are just, sons of men who saw sons of men. Nonsense. These are sons of God. And in the Old Testament, whenever you hear the term sons of God, it is referring to angels. So, and this appears twice in the Old Testament, if I'm not mistaken. The first one is in Genesis 6. The second event is in Job chapter 1, when the sons of God presented themselves before God. Satan was also among them. These sons of God are angels. Now let's go back to Genesis 6. So these sons of God, after mingling with women, defiling themselves, they gave birth to Nephilims, the gigantic beings that were very wise, very technical, very knowledgeable and skillful in all ways, but very violent and very rebellious. Now, in the book of Enoch, it was the Watchers. It was a group of 200 commanders of angels, led by two major generals like Samyaza and Azazel. These were big, top military generals of God that were sent to watch over human beings and also sort of keep the interest of God on earth intact. So they went at Mount Hermon and they made an oath there that none of them would walk back on what they were about to decide. So they decided to take wives for themselves and make offsprings like human beings, which was not their nature. So they lost their estate. They lost their heavenly estate. They became worthless, and they committed a crime that was so gross. And after giving birth to these children, they started to teach human beings sorcery and hidden sciences that were forbidden. They thought that's where, witchcraft started. The enchantment and cutting of roots, and turning into animals and so forth. So after Azazel and his group realized that they sinned big time and that they could not go back to heaven. In fact, they attempted to go back to heaven, but they could not anymore. All the possibilities, if there's such a sentence in English, all the possibilities were withdrawn. So they could not go back to heaven. Now what happened? The earth became filled with violence and bloodshed. So there was so much blood on earth to the point that the angels of God, Michael, Gabriel, Phanuel, Uriel, Salatiel, Ragel, and the rest of God's angels prayed to God, and they said, God, you see what is happening, but you are not giving us any instruction. What is going on? What do we do? You are not telling us anything. You see, and that's when God started to instruct his angels, giving them responsibilities one by one. And he said to Gabriel, go and cause conflict between these Nephilims, the children of these angels, to fight themselves. Go and cause confusion among them. And he sent Michael to bind Azazel and put him into prison. And every angel was given an assignment by God to do. So Raphael was sent to heal the earth of all the plagues and to reorganize it. Now, after these angels were bound, they were kept in prison, they prayed to God for their children, that at least let their children be accepted to be among human beings. And God said, nope, these spirits of yours, they are not human beings. You have wronged man. You have wronged mankind by defiling yourselves with women and creating offsprings thereof. Therefore, from now on, these spirits will be called evil spirits, and they will be hovering upon the face of the earth. So the spirits of the Nephilims are the ones that we call demons today, because they are born between men and angels. They are called evil spirits. And during the flood, the flesh of perished, but the spirits were not bound or put in prison. They were allowed to roam the earth atmospheric environment as evil spirits. And that's why these spirits are always the ones that are possessing human beings, because they long to be in the body. They cannot function without a body. They always need a body to function. These are evil spirits, and these are demons. So they are very limited, and they are in fact the very low ranking spirits. So these are the spirits at the end of the day that became the so-called ancestral spirits that most of you in Africa are talking about, and you are glorifying them, and you think they are watching over you, and you deceive everyone else to believe that. They are not watching over you. They are watching against you. So these spirits are the ones that took over, especially in Africa, because the African people failed to learn the environment in which they live. They failed to understand animal husbandry. They failed to understand agronomy. They failed to understand biology. They failed to understand geometry. They failed in all aspects. And therefore, they became lazy so as to depend on spirits. They went to spirits to acquire rain when they failed to understand climate change. That in our atmospheric environment, in our earth, on this earth that we live in, we need rain. But this rain is subject to climate change. Few people are calling African religion. If this is what you refer to as African religion, you need to know that you have a stupid religion. Because a religion that wastes the other person in order for one to be great is a stupid religion. A religion that, sheds blood to get rain, or for cattle to reproduce, or for one to be able to be the best fisherman in the village. You make somebody's son mad. You turn his mind upside down for you to prosper. Both you and your religion are foolish and must be condemned. So this is what made it so much easy for the Europeans to come and take over. Because by the time the European came, the first European man, set his foot in Africa, Africans were busy appeasing spirits, and they did not even have time to be productive, let alone to be innovative. They didn't have time for that. They become useless and, foolishly unproductive, because all the time they were after these useless demonic spirits. So when we talk about a white man who came from Norway and started taking land and started taking slaves, is that possible? It's not possible, because somebody will argue and say, where was an African man when a white man was taking land? The African man was there, but he was unproductive. He was useless. He was already found drunk. An African man was drunk in the worship of demons that rendered him unproductive. Therefore, Look, we have our tradition. We had our culture that was powerful. We had a culture that was very powerful. And that was, we discovered that we can make pots out of clay. We discovered that we can weave baskets out of palm leaves, and we can make, cups, out of wood. That was tradition, that was culture, wisdom. But we left all that and we went after demons. We went after demons because we failed to understand our environment. That's why we could not discover diamond until when we woke up from this slumber. We were already in the midst of being slaves of a white man. We started to see how a white man was prospering because of a simple piece of stone that we were digging for him. That's when we realized that, so there is wealth in these stones. And we started fighting. Apparently we are fighting for our resources. We went to fight. We came back. We sat on table with empty mind. Because we didn't understand what we went to fight for. Therefore, as a result, we got political freedom. Freedom just to make noise. Freedom to become politicians, to become governors, become councillors, to become useless academic professionals. You find somebody who is a professor in agriculture, but he does not have a garden. That's Africa. Somebody who is a chairperson of an agronomic board that does not even have any, not even a vegetable garden, but is a chairperson of an agronomic board. This is a witch doctor mentality, where you find a witch doctor apparently making people rich when he himself is filthy, messed up, and very disorganized. But this is the same person that is apparently able to make you rich. What nonsense is that? So these are demonic schemes that our forefathers spent their time. They spent their time chasing after these things, and they became useless and unproductive. The reason why we were colonized by white people is because we were useless and unproductive. That's the reason. Who made us useless? The demonic spirits that we started naming after our forefathers and saying they are our ancestral spirits. Those are the spirits that rendered us useless and unproductive. So the area we realize this, and the area we face this truth, the earlier we admit this, the better. If at all we are able to admit this, because we want to continue playing victim. We want to continue telling the world that we were innocent. It's just a white man that came from Norway and took our land. Nonsense. We were not innocent. We have killed a lot of people. We have committed a lot of atrocities that are unaccounted for. Unaccounted for. In the name of rain. In the name of, becoming the best fisherman. Or, having a lot of cattle. You make somebody else useless for you to be productive. That's not our culture. In our culture, we become great because of what we have done for others. We become great because we breathe, or we become great because we make others great. That's our culture. But The thing of becoming great by wasting other people's lives, that's demonic. And that's what our forefathers spent time doing. So by the time they woke up, it was too late. The Europeans have already spent 500 years building their economies and, putting everything in order. They build economic institutions that continue to benefit them from one generation to the other. We build demonic institutions that we are calling culture, and they continue to waste us from one generation to the other. You see the difference? They were busy establishing economic institutions. We were busy establishing demonic institutions that rendered us unproductive and useless. The earlier we admit this truth, the better. We need to admit that. So as I come to close, I want to invite you to this page. I want you to like, to subscribe, and to share, and also to put your comment there. Let us share. You might have been, from another country. You might be in Namibia or wherever you are, especially if you're an African person. Let's talk, because as Africans, we need to admit the truth that we contributed to whatever we have gone through. We have a major contribution to what we have gone through, because if we would have been mentally intact, the white men would have difficulties conquering us. The white men would have difficulties conquering us. But we left our brains and we started chasing false spirits for false, fortunes. That if you take a stick and you just lift it up like this, all women will come to you. Nonsense. If you want women, go and use your medulla oblongata. Talk to a woman, convince her why do you want her, and she has a choice to say yes or no.